The morning of my 16th birthday started like any other, except it didn't. The air was sticky with summer heat, the hum of ceiling fans cutting through the quiet house. I sat at the edge of my bed, waiting for something, though I didn't know what. When my parents called me down for breakfast, I found Lila already seated at the table, wearing the kind of bright smile reserved for privilege. A brand new tablet rested in front of her, its sleek edges catching the sunlight. "You're going to love this," my mother said, beaming as she set it down. Lila's eyes sparkled, her fingers tapping the screen before I could even greet her. And me? I had a small, folded envelope containing 2 gift cards. Practical. Useful. Barely noticeable. I forced a smile, letting it slide across my face as naturally as I could. Inside, I felt the familiar sting of invisibility. My parents didn't notice, my sister barely acknowledged me, and the envelope felt like the loudest symbol of all. My place in this family had already been decided. By the time I was 10, I had learned a pattern. Every achievement I worked hard for, the spelling bee, the science fair, art shows, earned a polite nod and a quick, "That's nice, dear." Lila's small successes, however, were celebrated as though the sun had risen again. Birthdays, holidays, even everyday gestures, were all magnified in her orbit, leaving me on the periphery. I tried to understand. I tried to excel quietly, to be helpful, to stay invisible so I wouldn't upset the fragile balance. I learned early on that silence is often the path of least resistance in a family that sees through favoritism as normal. But silence has a cost. By my teenage years, the weight of it all became harder to carry. Every time I poured myself into a project, my parents' praise would be lukewarm. Every time Lila got attention, I noticed it keenly, memorizing the gestures, the tone, the way their eyes lit up for her but rarely for me. I started documenting things quietly, almost like a ritual. Small notes about gifts, allowances, and opportunities my parents gave her, which somehow never reached me. It was more than money. It was recognition, freedom, the sense of being seen. At 16, I decided I couldn't remain invisible forever. I started saving small amounts from my allowance, from tutoring jobs, from commissions I took for painting or sewing. I built a quiet ledger, noting every purchase, every overlooked opportunity. I began to sketch out my dreams in the margins of my notebooks. Careers, travels, aspirations I wasn't allowed to voice aloud. The first spark of rebellion came the day my mother bought a new designer bag, one I had only seen in magazines, and told me casually, "It's for the family, dear." She didn't hide the joy on Lila's face when she twirled it around her wrist. That afternoon, I realized the envelope I'd received years ago wasn't just a birthday gift. It was a symbol of control. I began to pay attention, quietly but with purpose. I noticed patterns. The jewelry, the spa days, the new phone. All of it lavish. None of it aligned with the careful budget speeches I had grown up hearing. I watched, calculated, and saved. I started taking on extra work, not to compete, but to carve out my own corner of life, free from interference. The turning point came with graduation. While Lila received a brand new laptop for college, I got a check that barely covered books. My parents smiled, expecting me to nod politely. But instead, I held the envelope in my hands and looked at it closely. I remembered every moment, every gift redirected, every achievement downplayed. I realized then that invisibility had taught me patience, strategy, and observation. A week later, my Aunt Eleanor came to visit. She had always been supportive of me from afar, sending letters and small gifts she hoped would inspire my creativity. This time, she came with a purpose. We sat on the porch with the sun lowering in the sky, the smell of freshly cut grass in the air. I finally opened up to her about everything. The favoritism, the overlooked opportunities, the envelopes that never reached me. Her eyes softened but grew serious. "Joy," she said. "You've been invisible for far too long. It's time you claim what's yours." She handed me a check. enough to start a small project, and more importantly, offered me a summer apprenticeship at her design studio. You'll learn everything from the ground up. It's your chance to build what's yours without interference. At home, the atmosphere changed slowly. My parents noticed I had begun saving independently, documenting everything carefully. Lila continued to flaunt her privileges, unaware of the quiet storm brewing. I didn't act rashly. I simply observed and continued building my foundation. The day finally arrived when I confronted my parents. Not with anger, not with shouting, but with clarity. I laid out the evidence, showing how gifts, opportunities, and resources meant for me had been redirected. I spoke calmly, each word deliberate. You've spent what was meant for my future on your choices and Lila's comfort. I can't trust that anymore. The silence that followed was heavy. My mother twisted her hands. My father's eyes darted away, and Lila clutched her phone as if it could shield her from the truth. I didn't wait for apologies or explanations. I simply packed my things. Each item folded and stored became a small declaration. My life, my choices, my boundaries. Moving out was both terrifying and liberating. My aunt's apartment was modest, but the light spilling through the windows made every corner feel like possibility. I set up my sketches, fabrics, and tools, and for the first time, I worked without anyone else's expectations dictating my pace. Weeks passed. I immersed myself in my work, learning new techniques, building designs from scratch, and finding joy in creation itself. The silence I once feared became my ally. I realized that being unnoticed for so long had given me patience, focus, and resilience. I had learned to see, to plan, to act, not for recognition, but for myself. Occasionally, I thought of Lila, my parents, the family dinner tables where I felt invisible, but the sting of neglect had transformed into motivation. I had reclaimed my life, quietly, steadily, without drama, without anger, only self-respect and determination. By the end of the summer, I had completed my first small collection. Eleanor praised my work, and I saw the reflection of my own efforts in the fabrics, stitches, and designs. I understood then that the most profound revenge isn't shouting, exposing, or punishing. It's building a life so complete, so yours that nothing and no one can take it from you. And in that quiet studio, sunlight hitting the tabletop, sketches spread around me, I finally felt visible. Not because my parents saw me, not because Lila acknowledged me, but because I had seen myself, claimed myself, and that was enough. And the lesson I learned, truly learned, is this. Your worth isn't determined by who notices you, but by how you value yourself. When you claim your life, set your boundaries, and pursue your dreams, no one can ever take your light away.